The chandeliers of the Marigold Grand Hotel sparkled like frozen stars, casting golden light across marble floors as guests in designer suits and champagne gowns laughed over clinking glasses. But Liam Callahan saw none of it. He stumbled past them, a ghost wrapped in Armani and regret, his vision blurred by whiskey tears and betrayal sharp enough to cut bone. The corridor stretched like a tunnel to nowhere as he fumbled with his keycard. Room 906, 960. It no longer mattered. Not when his heart had been shattered by the sight of his fiancée, entwined with the one person he trusted most, his brother. The betrayal felt like drowning in velvet, silent, suffocating, beautiful from the outside but devastating within. He just wanted a bed, a moment of oblivion, a place to collapse where memory couldn't reach him. As the door clicked open, he didn't notice the subtle scent of lavender instead of his cologne, nor did he register the soft humming coming from the bathroom or the pink suitcase half tucked by the dresser. His body simply craved escape. He kicked off his shoes, face planted onto the bed, and let the night swallow him whole. Hours passed like whispers until sunlight tiptoed through the curtains, and Liam stirred, groggy and raw, his temple throbbing with the weight of last night's sorrow. And then he felt it, warmth beside him, a soft presence under the tangled white sheets, a breath that wasn't his own. Panic raced through him like wildfire, and his eyes snapped open to see the silhouette of a woman curled beside him, her bare shoulder kissed by the rising sun, her curls cascading like silk waterfalls over the pillow. His breath caught in his throat. This wasn't his fiancée. This wasn't even his room. And just as he moved to slip away like a regretful storm, she turned, her eyes blinking open, soft green like a spring thaw, locking with his in a moment that made time forget how to tick. She didn't scream, didn't pull the sheets to her chin, or reach for her phone. Instead, she offered a sleepy smile and a whisper that would haunt him forever. "You've got the wrong room, don't you?" His mouth opened, but no words came. Apologies tangled with disbelief and embarrassment painted his face. She sat up slowly, revealing a cotton tank top and honesty in her eyes, and introduced herself. Harper Lane, just a small-town waitress who'd come to the city chasing a new start, hoping for luck in the form of a job interview and a miracle in between. Liam, still stunned, mumbled his name like it didn't matter anymore. Because in that moment, he wasn't Liam the billionaire, the socialite, the heir. He was just a broken man in the wrong place, with the right kind of stranger. They shared awkward chuckles as she offered him water and an aspirin, her calm like a balm against his storm. He apologized 1,000 ways, and she waved him off with the grace of someone who'd survived worse than a drunken billionaire in her bed. He reached for his jacket, eyes avoiding hers, but something tugged at him. Something about her softness, her strength, the way she didn't flinch or judge, as if she knew what it was like to be lost too. As he left, heart still heavy but strangely lighter, he didn't notice the glint of gold on the nightstand, his Rolex, a token of a night that would echo louder than he could imagine. Harper sat back on the bed, her fingers brushing the indentation on the pillow where he'd slept, a ghost of something not quite real and not quite gone. Sometimes fate doesn't knock politely. It barges in drunk with messy hair and broken hearts and rewrites the rules before you even realize you're playing a new game. Back in his cold but pristine penthouse overlooking the city skyline, Liam Callahan stood like a statue near the glass wall, his hands in his pockets, his reflection staring back at him. But it wasn't himself he saw anymore. It was the memory of a woman whose eyes spoke louder than his silence ever could. A woman who didn't know who he was, didn't care what he owned, and yet saw him with more humanity than anyone ever had. Harper Lane had imprinted herself on his mind like a melody he couldn't forget, her calm voice circling in his ears like a lullaby he hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. The world around him buzzed with deals and deadlines, but his thoughts rebelled, slipping away to her warmth, her steady gaze, the effortless way she breathed life into a room with no diamonds, just dignity. He tried to reason with himself. Why did it matter? Why her? But no answer came, only that unfamiliar ache in his chest that reminded him not everything broken stays that way. Meanwhile, in a modest hotel room just a few blocks away, Harper sat cross-legged on the bed, the morning sun brushing her face as she held the gold Rolex in her hand, turning it slowly like it held the answer to a question she never meant to ask. She could have pawned it, should have even. Her rent was overdue, the electric bill unpaid, her daughter's school shoes falling apart. But something about that night, that man, his vulnerability, stopped her. She tucked the watch safely into a scarf-lined box and walked down to the front desk, hope flickering in her voice as she asked for the name of the man in room 960. But the concierge shook his head with polite detachment. No names, no records, hotel policy. He remained a mystery with blue eyes and broken sadness. Harper sighed, defeated but strangely unsettled, unaware that she wasn't the only one haunted. Liam, now driven by something he couldn't name, had begun digging into the hotel's internal systems, paying his assistant discreetly to track who had stayed in that room and when, leveraging favors with quiet urgency. He didn't want to admit he cared, his heart still bruised from betrayal, but something about Harper refused to leave him. She wasn't glamorous or loud, but she carried the kind of beauty that bloomed quietly and stayed rooted, and that was more dangerous than anything he'd known. Days passed with restless sleep and half-eaten meals until one of his security advisors came back with grainy security footage. There she was, her curls bouncing as she walked out of the lobby, suitcase rolling behind her like she carried dreams instead of clothes. The frame gave him an address, and his heart thundered like a warning bell as he followed it to a small corner diner called Daisy's, tucked between a thrift shop and a barber shop, a world away from penthouses and Galenites. He stood outside the glass window, shielding himself behind his sunglasses, watching through the steam-streaked glass as Harper moved between tables, her apron stained, but her smile unwavering, pouring coffee and collecting plates with the grace of someone who'd carried burdens heavier than any tray. And then it happened. A flash of pink sneakers darted across the floor, a giggle like sunlight breaking through clouds, and a tiny girl with strawberry blonde curls launched herself into Harper's arms and squealed, "Mommy!" Liam's breath caught mid-step, his world flipping sideways in a single second. The word echoed in his ears like a siren, louder than traffic, louder than reason. Mommy? And suddenly, the woman who had once been a comforting stranger was now someone's whole world. He took a shaky step back, heart torn between disbelief and something deeper, something raw. Who was this girl? How old was she? And why did Harper's face suddenly look like it carried 1,000 untold stories? He wasn't sure if he should go inside or disappear forever, but his legs felt frozen, his mind spiraling with questions he hadn't been ready to ask. And as Harper lifted the child into her arms and twirled her, unaware of the man watching from the other side of the glass, Liam felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not confusion, not guilt, but a strange, impossible hope wrapped in fear. Maybe the night he'd thought was a mistake was destiny in disguise. The bell above the diner door jingled like a fragile chime as Liam stepped inside, the scent of frying bacon and fresh coffee mingling with the weight in his chest. His shoes met the worn black and white tiles as his blue eyes locked onto Harper, who stood frozen behind the counter, a half-poured cup of coffee trembling slightly in her grasp. Their gazes met like two memories crashing into the present, and the space between them thickened with words unspoken, truths untold, and a night neither could fully forget. Harper blinked, her expression unreadable, until Liam walked forward and quietly placed the golden Rolex on the counter between them. Not as a token, not as payment, but as a question. Why hadn't she sold it? And yet before he could ask, the little girl tugged at Harper's apron with innocence that melted tension, giving Harper the strength to speak. "She's not mine," Harper said softly, her voice laced with something heavier than tiredness. "Truth. Her name's Violet. She's my niece. My sister. She died 2 years ago in a car crash, drunk driver, wrong lane. I was all she had left." Her eyes darted to Violet, now coloring quietly in a booth, her small fingers gripping a pink crayon like it was magic. Liam's pulse slowed as he absorbed every syllable, stunned not by tragedy, but by how much Harper had carried without collapsing. He nodded, unsure what to say, and Harper motioned him to sit. Over 2 cups of lukewarm coffee and a plate of cold fries, she let down the armor she'd spent years building, piece by piece. She once studied literature and creative arts at NYU, had dreams of writing novels that would change the world, dreams that were sacrificed the moment she chose love over legacy. My parents didn't approve of me raising Violet, she said, swirling her spoon in the coffee. They wanted to send her into foster care. Start over. Pretend she never existed. I couldn't. I wouldn't. So they cut me off. No tuition, no support, just silence. Her voice didn't crack, but Liam saw the glass in her eyes, saw the way she fought to hold dignity like it was the last thing she owned. He leaned in, not out of pity, but awe, the kind that comes when you meet someone stronger than their circumstances. His own story swam to the surface, being betrayed by the people closest to him, having wealth that protected his name but never his heart. And for the first time in years, he listened not with defenses, but with understanding. Harper smiled weakly, clearly not used to being truly heard, and that smile, raw and unfiltered, pierced something tender inside him. People like you don't stay, she added, eyes narrowing as if preparing herself for disappointment. You pass through places like this, like storms, loud, intense, beautiful, and then you're gone. You leave pieces, and the rest of us clean them up. Her words weren't cruel but cautious, like someone who'd bled from reaching too often toward the wrong people. Liam shook his head slowly, folding his hands on the table with unusual humility. I don't want anything from you, Harper. I just didn't want to forget you, he said, his voice low, vulnerable, real. She looked at him then. Not as a billionaire, not as a stranger from a drunken mistake, but as a man whose walls had started to crack. In that diner, time forgot to move. The world outside paused, and 2 damaged souls finally sat with their truths. Harper glanced again at Violet, now fast asleep in the booth, her head resting on the coloring book, innocence untouched by the burdens circling her life. You know, I used to think love was a luxury, Harper murmured. Then I realized it's a responsibility. You don't just fall into it. You fight for it. You protect it. You stay, even when it's hard. Liam felt something shift inside him. Not attraction, not infatuation, but a recognition of resilience, of loss, of someone worth the fight. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't say something romantic, didn't make promises he wasn't ready to keep. But his presence said what his lips didn't. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, the city moved on. Cars honked, strangers passed, rain threatened. But inside Daisy's diner, a silent promise was made beneath flickering fluorescent lights and chipped ceramic mugs. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something stronger, the beginning of belief. The fragile warmth that had begun to bloom between Liam and Harper was shattered the moment the diner's door swung open with a jarring clang, cutting through the quiet like a storm crashing into a calm sea. In walked Natalie, Liam's ex-fiancée, a woman whose presence still carried the heavy scent of betrayal and entitlement. Her lips curled into a smirk as she casually flipped through the glossy pages of a tabloid featuring headlines about Liam's recent public disgrace. Callahan heirs fall from grace, her voice dripping with venom as she taunted. Quite a fall from billion-dollar boardrooms to greasy diners, Liam. How the mighty have stumbled. The diner seemed to shrink under her gaze, as if the walls themselves recoiled from the toxic energy she carried. Her eyes locked onto Harper, flickering with a dangerous mix of jealousy and disdain, as she sneered, "So this is your rebound? A waitress? How utterly pathetic!" Harper's heart thundered, every muscle tense. But she refused to let the venom steal her dignity. Steadying her breath, she wiped her trembling hands on her apron and met Natalie's icy stare with a fierce calm, her voice clear and steady. Better a waitress than a gold-digging ghost who broke a man's heart. The diner fell into a suffocating silence, patrons holding their breath as if waiting for a spark to ignite. Liam's chest tightened as past wounds ripped open, memories flooding back, of betrayal, humiliation, and broken promises. But before the tension could unravel further, the heavy door creaked again, and a larger shadow entered. Charles Callahan, Liam's father, towering and cold, his eyes sharp with disdain as he surveyed the scene. His voice boomed with cruel authority. "You think this woman will help you rebuild our family's legacy, son? She's beneath us, beneath everything we stand for." The room seemed to hold its breath as Liam's hands trembled, his world fracturing once more under the weight of expectation and rejection. Yet his voice, though shaking, carried a newfound resolve as he stood taller than he had in weeks. "She's the first real thing I've had in years. She's not here for my name or my money. She's here because she cares, because she stayed." The clash of old wealth and new hope collided fiercely as Charles sneered, his words laced with cold finality. But Liam no longer wavered. His heart had chosen a different path, one that refused to bow to legacy or privilege. Meanwhile, Harper, overwhelmed by the sudden tempest of judgment and scorn, slipped away quietly to the back of the diner, her breath catching as tears threatened to spill, the weight of harsh words and broken dreams pressing heavily on her chest. Love, she realized bitterly, was never simple, never easy. It came tangled with pain, with sacrifice, and with battles she had yet to win. The night air outside whispered cold reminders that happiness was fragile, that the past had claws that reached deep, and that sometimes standing for love meant standing alone. Inside that small diner, beneath flickering lights and worn wooden tables, two souls wrestled with the ghosts of yesterday, trying to forge a tomorrow where trust could grow despite the shadows, where hope could bloom even when the heart was bruised. Liam clenched his fists, his blue eyes burning with silent promises to protect the woman who had ignited a fire inside him, a fire that would not be extinguished by scorn or scandal. And Harper, drying her tears, summoned every ounce of courage she had left, knowing that whatever storms came, this fight was worth every scar, every sleepless night, every broken piece. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent rhythm, but inside Daisy's diner, the battle lines were drawn, hearts laid bare, and a new chapter waiting to be written, one filled with heartbreak, defiance, and the raw, painful silence that only true love in real family drama could bring. The rain fell softly, a quiet symphony against the darkened rooftop where Harper sat alone, her slender frame hunched beneath the weight of invisible burdens, the absence of makeup revealing the raw vulnerability etched into her delicate features, the shadows beneath her eyes telling stories of sleepless nights and battles fought in silence. Liam approached with hesitant steps, the city's distant hum fading as he drew near, and when he settled beside her, the space between them was filled not with words, but with the unspoken ache of two souls who had wandered through storms and heartbreak to find this fragile moment. His voice broke the stillness, low and earnest. "I was raised in mansions, surrounded by opulence and wealth, but I never truly knew what home meant until now, until you." Harper's gaze drifted away, toward the city lights blurred by rain, and her whisper trembled with a heartbreaking truth. "You'll leave. They all do." The fear in her eyes was a mirror of her past, a testament to the pain that love could bring. And yet Liam's fingers gently reached to cradle her chin, turning her face toward his with a tenderness that spoke of unwavering devotion. "Not this time. I'm not leaving." No music played, only the rhythmic patter of raindrops and the steady sound of their breathing mingling in the cool night air, creating a sacred space where nothing else mattered. Liam leaned in slowly, not driven by desire, but by a desperate longing to heal, to be seen, to see someone else's brokenness and still choose to stay. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft, hesitant, and full of unspoken promises, a kiss that whispered, "I see you, all of you, and I choose you despite every scar and fear." Harper's lips parted slightly, her voice a fragile thread against his. "I'm scared." His own voice cracked with vulnerability. "So am I. But maybe together, we can build something even scared people can live in. Something real. Something lasting." Under the vast, stormy sky, the rain washing away their fears and past regrets, two fractured hearts found a moment of fragile peace and understanding. An unspoken vow weaving between them, fragile but fierce, to love not in perfection, but in truth, not with certainty, but with courage, to walk forward hand in hand into an uncertain future where honesty would be their foundation. Beneath the gray clouds and shimmering droplets, hope flickered like a fragile flame, illuminating the night with the promise that even broken souls could find solace in each other's arms. And as they pulled apart, eyes locked in silent communion, the world felt both unbearably heavy and infinitely light, a paradox held together by the delicate thread of trust they had dared to weave. In that quiet rooftop refuge, away from judgments, expectations, and past wounds, Liam and Harper carved out a space where love wasn't about grand gestures or flawless beginnings, but about two imperfect people choosing to face their fears and heal together. The city below, bustling and indifferent, held no power here, where rain became a baptism of renewal in their kiss, a sacred seal on a promise whispered into the night. No matter what storms would come, no matter the battles ahead, they would stand united, willing to stumble, to fall, but never to turn away from the fragile hope blossoming between them, knowing that sometimes the deepest love grows not from fireworks or passion, but from quiet moments of courage and the willingness to be seen in one's most vulnerable form. The morning dawned with a cruel emptiness that swallowed Liam whole. Harper was gone, vanished like a whisper on the wind, leaving behind a void deeper than any heartbreak he had ever known. There was no note to explain her sudden disappearance, no message to soothe the gnawing uncertainty clawing at his chest, just the cold, unforgiving silence of an empty apartment that had once held their fragile promises. Desperation fueled Liam's every move as he scoured the city, searching every familiar place, every diner, every corner where her laughter once echoed. But no trace of Harper could be found, and with each passing hour, his hope wavered, replaced by a growing fury that burned through his veins, twisting into a bitter ache of loss and confusion. Then, like a dagger coated in ice, a letter arrived, its paper thick and formal, yet its words sharp enough to cut through steel. Harper had been forced to choose between love and safety, accepting a financial settlement that guaranteed protection for her niece, but demanded her permanent absence from Liam's life. And at the bottom of the letter, the unmistakable signature of Charles Callahan, his father, the architect of his torment, and the puppeteer of his heartbreak. The betrayal was a poison Liam never saw coming, a cruel chess move designed to save a legacy but destroy a love that had just begun to bloom. Confronting his father in the cold marble halls of the family estate, Liam's voice trembled with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You bought the only woman I ever loved?" But Charles's reply was a venomous hiss. "I protected the legacy, Liam. You'll thank me one day when the pain fades, when you understand that some sacrifices must be made for power to endure." And with that, the chasm between father and son yawned wider than ever, filled with words unsaid and wounds reopened. Liam didn't respond, his silence louder than any scream as he turned his back on the opulence and chains of Callahan Industries, walking away from the throne built on cold ambition and hollow victories, stripping himself bare of the titles and burdens that had suffocated him for so long. For the first time in his life, he was simply Liam, a man stripped of wealth, of power, but still carrying the heavy, unyielding memory of a girl who chose to vanish into silence rather than watch their fragile love crumble under the weight of deceit and control. The pain was raw and relentless, a storm raging in his chest. But amid the ruin, a small ember of hope flickered, a promise that even in loss, there could be a path to healing, a chance to reclaim himself and honor the love that had taught him what it meant to be truly alive. And as the sun set behind the towering city skyline, casting long shadows over his broken world, Liam vowed to fight, not for riches, not for legacy, but for the love that had slipped through his fingers and for the truth buried beneath the lies. This was not the end but the beginning of a new chapter, where the man who had lost everything would learn what it meant to live, to love, and to rise from the ashes of betrayal with a heart both shattered and unbreakable. Months slipped by like fading echoes. the relentless tick of the clock only reminding Liam more painfully of what he had lost. His penthouse, once filled with the illusion of grandeur and success, now felt cold and hollow. A palace without a queen, a throne with no heir to his heart. The silence pressed down on him like a suffocating fog, wrapping around his soul and leaving a raw ache that no amount of money or power could ever heal. He found himself wandering through his days as a shadow of the man he used to be, the wounds of Harper's absence bleeding through every smile forced for the world, every laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Yet deep inside, beneath the layers of hurt and regret, a fragile seed of hope remained. Hope born from the memory of her warmth, her kindness, the way she saw him not as a billionaire's heir, but as a man worthy of love. That hope drove him to places he had never imagined himself going, places that Harper had quietly championed long before they met. One rainy afternoon, his feet found their way to a modest shelter on the edge of the city, a place Harper had once mentioned in passing, describing it as a sanctuary for broken souls, a refuge where love was given without price and hope was handed out like the bread that fed the hungry. He volunteered there, not to fix others, but to find a purpose that might fill the cavernous void inside. The shelter was a symphony of quiet resilience, the soft murmur of whispered prayers, the gentle hum of prayers rising in the dim light, and the occasional burst of laughter from children who dream beyond the pain. It was here, in this world away from glass towers and whispered deals, that Liam felt the first stirrings of something real again. One dreary evening, as the rain streaked the windows and the sky wept its own sorrows, Liam's gaze fell upon a small figure standing by the donation table. A little girl, no older than 5, with wide eyes that sparkled like untamed stars and an uncertain smile that seemed to carry the weight of too many hard days. She clutched a small, worn doll tightly to her chest, and her gaze flitted nervously from shadow to shadow, as if searching for something or someone. Liam's breath hitched, the world narrowing until all he could see was the unmistakable echo of Harper's strength in the child's stance. He followed her quietly, each step heavy with a mixture of dread and hope, until she led him to a quiet corner of the shelter where a woman stood, her figure slender and weary, her face pale but glowing with an inner fire that refused to be snuffed out. Harper. She turned slowly as if sensing the weight of the moment, and their eyes met, eyes filled with 1,000 unspoken emotions, surprise, relief, sorrow, and something that fluttered like a fragile bird, yearning to be free. Liam, she breathed, the single word breaking the silence between them like a whispered prayer. He took a step forward, his heart pounding, afraid to shatter this fragile reunion, yet unable to resist the pull that had drawn him back to her. "You disappeared," he said, voice raw and trembling. "Why?" Her hands trembled as she reached out to steady herself against the worn table, eyes glistening with tears she fought to hold back. "Your father," she said quietly. "He threatened me. Threatened to take everything. From me, from her." Her gaze shifted to the little girl who now hid timidly behind Harper's legs. "I didn't leave you because I wanted to. I left to protect us. To protect her." Liam felt his chest tighten as the cruel truth landed like a stone inside him. The man he had once called father had used fear and power to tear them apart, to rob them of their chance at happiness. Yet here, standing before him, was a woman who had fought harder than anyone he'd ever known. She was a survivor, a warrior cloaked in kindness and resilience, someone who had sacrificed her dreams and her family to shield an innocent life from the storm. And in that moment, Liam realized that love was not just about passion or grand gestures, but about sacrifice, trust, and the courage to stand together against the darkness. "I don't want a world without you," he whispered, his voice breaking with the weight of all the months spent longing for this moment. "Not now. Not ever." Tears welled in Harper's eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she allowed herself to lean into the love she had guarded for so long. Liam reached into his pocket with a trembling hand, pulling out a small velvet box, simple, unadorned, but heavy with the promise of everything they could build together. Kneeling before her, he opened it to reveal a ring that was not about wealth or status, but about real, honest love, a love that could withstand storms and still bloom. "I'm not offering you diamonds or palaces," he said softly. "I'm offering you real mornings. The smell of burnt toast, laughter that fills the silence, silly arguments that end in the sweetest apologies, and a lifetime of imperfect moments shared side by side. I'm offering you forever, Harper. Not a fairy tale, but a real home." The rain outside softened, as if the world itself was holding its breath, witnessing the rebirth of something precious. Harper's sobs broke free, a river of emotions long dammed finally pouring out, and through her tears a smile blossomed, bright, raw, and hopeful. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling but fierce. "A thousand times, yes." And as Liam slipped the ring onto her finger, sealing their promise, the storm outside began to fade, replaced by the gentle glow of dawn. Together they stood on the precipice of a new beginning, two broken souls finding home not in grand estates or fortunes, but in the quiet strength of love that refused to give up. The shelter around them hummed with life, a beacon of hope for those who had lost their way. And Liam and Harper knew, with every beat of their hearts, that this was just the first page of their forever, a story written not in gold or headlines, but in truth, courage, and the kind of love that heals all wounds. And in that sacred moment, beneath skies washed clean by rain and lit by the soft glow of new possibilities, Liam finally understood what it meant to come home, not to a place, but to a person who held his heart, his past, and his future in her gentle hands. Forever wasn't just a word, it was their promise, their sanctuary, their true beginning.